Every city is a landscape of layers, new worlds built on the foundations of the old. In Tokyo, a place defined by relentless forward momentum, the gleam of the present often obscures the shadows of the past. This is Sunshine 60, a tower of glass and commerce in the vibrant heart of Ikebukuro. It functions as a symbol of modern Japan's prosperity. But the ground it occupies tells a different story. A narrative so dark it was intentionally buried, paved over, and hidden behind a name meant to evoke only light. Because this land was once the site of Sugamo Prison, where some of history's most infamous war criminals were hanged. The steel and glass of today stand in silent opposition to what came before. A past of judgment, retribution, and state-sanctioned death. Many believe the concrete has not been enough to cleanse the stain of what happened here. That the energy of the condemned remains, a spiritual residue trapped between the world that judged them and the one built over their final moments. Our investigation today begins here, in the heart of this dark history, but it will not end here. We will uncover the story of Sugamo Prison, from a cage for political dissidents to the final stage for post-war justice, and explore the chilling paranormal accounts that cling to this site. Then, our journey will take us to a different site of profound sorrow, an abandoned sanatorium where the ghosts are not of soldiers, but of children lost to an invisible, relentless illness. Finally, we travel south to the islands of Okinawa, to the ruins of a luxury hotel built on sacred ground, a monument to ambition that angered the ancient spirits of the land. What happens when a place becomes defined by death, hubris, or tragedy? Can a land ever truly be cleansed of its past? Join me as we investigate 3 of Japan's most tragically haunted locations and confront their lingering spiritual echoes. To understand the stories surrounding Sunshine City, we have to strip away the glass and steel and return this land to what it once was. Sugamo Prison was constructed in 1895, long before Ikebukuro became a commercial center. Designed after European penal institutions, it was intended to represent modern authority, order, discipline, and control, made physical in brick and iron. By the early 20th century, Sugamo had already earned a reputation as a place where the state sent those it wanted forgotten. During the 1930s and 40s, as Japan's imperial government tightened its grip on dissent, Sugamo became a holding ground for political prisoners, communists, journalists, and others accused of violating the peace preservation laws. These were not criminals in the conventional sense, but people deemed dangerous to the idea of the state itself. Executions were carried out quietly, behind walls designed to absorb both sound and scrutiny. Among those put to death, here was Soviet spy Richard Sorge, hanged in 1944 after uncovering critical intelligence during the war. But Sugamo's darkest chapter began not during the rise of the empire, but after its collapse. When Japan surrendered in August of 1945, much of Tokyo lay in ruins from relentless firebombing. Sugamo Prison, however, remained largely intact. Allied occupation forces quickly seized control of the facility, transforming it from a tool of imperial authority into a detention center for Japan's former leadership. Beginning in November 1945, its cells filled with more than 2,000 suspected war criminals awaiting trial by the International Military Tribunal for the Far East, the Tokyo Trials. Prisoners ranged from military officers to cabinet members, men who had once shaped national policy, now confined to narrow concrete cells. The prison was operated under strict military oversight by the U.S. Eighth Army. General Douglas MacArthur ordered that guards be selected from American soldiers who had never fought the Japanese, an intentional attempt to remove vengeance from the process. Sugamo was meant to function as a place of judgment, not retribution. Life inside followed rigid rules. Prisoners were held in isolation, lights kept on at all hours. Accounts from the time describe inmates required to sleep with their hands visible, a constant precaution against suicide. The atmosphere was controlled, quiet, and tense, less a prison in the traditional sense than a waiting room for history. The Tokyo trials stretched on for more than 2 years. As testimony accumulated, the scale of wartime atrocities became impossible to deny. When verdicts were finally delivered, 7 Class A war criminals, including former Prime Minister Hideki Tojo, were sentenced to death. Just after midnight on December 23, 1948, the executions were carried out inside Sugamo Prison. Photography was tightly restricted, and only a small number of official witnesses were permitted. The hangings were conducted swiftly and without ceremony. There would be no public reckoning, no spectacle, only finality. Sugamo remained an execution site for convicted war criminals into 1950. In total, records indicate more than 50 men were put to death there. By the time the prison closed in 1962, its role in history was complete. But the land itself had absorbed decades of confinement, fear, and irreversible decisions. In 1971, the prison buildings were demolished. 7 years later, Sunshine 60 rose in their place, a tower of glass and commerce, deliberately named to evoke light, renewal, and forward momentum. What the demolition removed was the structure. What it could not remove was memory. Our investigation now takes us from the calculated justice of the state to a place where the sorrow is of a different, more intimate kind. The ghosts here are not of condemned men, but of children. We've arrived at the site of the former Kaizuka Children's Tuberculosis Sanatorium. Built in the years following the war, this hospital was a place of attempted healing, designed to be a refuge where sick children could receive care. For decades, it was a world unto itself, a community of young patients and dedicated staff battling a relentless illness. But as medical science advanced, the need for such sanatoriums dwindled. In 1992, the hospital was officially closed, and then it was simply abandoned. Unlike Sugamo, which was erased, the Kaizuka Sanatorium was left to decay. Nature began its slow, relentless reclamation. It was rediscovered in the 2000s by Japan's urban explorers, or Haikyo adventurers. What they found inside was a chilling time capsule. They described scenes of profound stillness and sorrow. According to their reports, they found entire wards filled with rusted hospital beds. More shockingly, they found boxes of patient files left behind. Medical records, charts, and even X-rays depicting the ravaged lungs of children were left exposed to the elements, a stark archive of the individual lives that passed through these halls. The explorers documented rooms filled with children's belongings, faded artwork, small shoes, toys, and books, as if their owners had just stepped out for a moment. The atmosphere they described was thick with an oppressive sadness. It didn't take long for the ghost stories to begin. The most common and heartbreaking claim is the sound of children's voices echoing through the empty corridors. Faint whispers, soft laughter, and most disturbingly, the sound of coughing coming from rooms empty for decades, an auditory residue of suffering. Others have reported seeing the fleeting figures of small children at the end of a long hallway or looking out of a grimy window. Eventually, the ruin was deemed too dangerous. Demolition began around 2014. Today, a riding hall and a restaurant reportedly stand where the hospital once did. An attempt, much like with Sunshine 60, to overwrite a place of sorrow. But legends are harder to erase than buildings. Even now, there are those who talk about strange lights in the woods, or the faint, disembodied voices of children carried on the night breeze. Our final destination takes us to Okinawa, to a story not of justice or illness, but of ambition and desecration. Here, on a hill with a commanding view of the sea, lie the ruins of the Nakagusuku Hotel, a monument to a dream that soured into a nightmare. It was built in the early 1970s by a wealthy businessman hoping to capitalize on the 1975 Okinawa Ocean Exposition. The plan was extravagant, a luxury resort complete with a water park and zoo, built right next to the ancient and revered Nakagusuku Castle. The problem was the location itself. Local monks and villagers warned the developer that the land was sacred, home to ancient tombs and burial sites. They pleaded with him not to build there, believing it would anger the spirits. The warnings were ignored. As construction began, strange and dangerous accidents plagued the site. Workers grew terrified, claiming the land was cursed, and began to abandon the project. The legends say the desperate owner decided to stay overnight in the unfinished hotel to prove it wasn't haunted. The stories diverge here. Some say he went insane by morning and was committed to an asylum. Others say he vanished. The more practical explanation points to Japan's bubble economy and poor financial planning. The project was officially halted mid-1975 as the contractor faced bankruptcy, and access to the site was restricted after the nearby castle was designated a protected cultural property. For nearly 50 years, the concrete skeleton was left to the mercy of the Okinawan elements. Urban explorers who ventured inside reported an eerie silence and a palpable sense of danger. Ghostly accounts from the ruins are varied and unsettling. People have reported hearing disembodied voices on the wind, seeing strange orbs of light dancing through the empty halls, and even smelling food being cooked in the derelict kitchens. The most persistent legend is that of the owner's ghost, now said to roam the corridors of his failed dream. The ruins were finally demolished by 2020, but the story of a man who defied the warnings of the spirits remains a potent local legend. As we reflect on these three locations, a profound question emerges. Which place is more haunted? The land of Sugamo, a site of calculated state-sanctioned death, where men paid the ultimate price for their crimes. The grounds of the Kaizuka Sanatorium, a place of innocent suffering, where children fought silent battles against an invisible enemy. Or the hill in Okinawa, where a modern dream clashed with ancient beliefs. The ghosts of Sugamo are figures of history, their identities tied to a global conflict. Their haunting is one of judgment and its aftermath. The echoes at the sanatorium are different, smaller, more personal. The reported sound of a child's cough in an empty room is, in its own way, deeply unsettling. It speaks to a helplessness and a vulnerability that is profoundly disturbing. The Nakagusuku Hotel ruin offers a third kind of haunting, one born of hubris. It's a cautionary tale about the consequences of ignoring the sacred, a story where the paranormal is a direct result of disrespect. It isn't a story of war or disease, but of a deliberate desecration of consecrated ground. Each site was built to contain something, one to contain criminals, another to contain a disease, and the last to contain a grand commercial ambition. All are now gone or replaced. But the spiritual residue, The weight of the human experience that saturated these locations seems to defy the wrecking ball and the bulldozer. It lingers as a feeling, an atmosphere, a story whispered from one person to another. From the urban heart of Tokyo to the quiet countryside and the shores of Okinawa, we have journeyed through 3 sites forever marked by their past. Sunshine 60 stands as a monument to Japan's post-war ambition, a defiant reach for the sky on ground that once tasted death. Yet the stories persist, a quiet reminder from beneath the concrete that some histories refuse to be buried. The lone stone in the park, pray for eternal peace, feels less like a historical marker and more like an active plea. Meanwhile, the memory of the Kaizuka Children's Sanatorium whispers through the trees that have reclaimed the land. Its story serves as a testament to a different kind of tragedy, the quiet, unseen battles fought in hospital wards. The tales of phantom children remind us that the deepest scars are often left not by grand conflicts, but by profound and personal loss. And finally, the legend of the Nakagusuku Hotel serves as a powerful warning. It speaks to a different kind of haunting, one born from the clash between modernity and tradition, ambition and reverence. Together, these locations force us to ask a fundamental question. Can a place hold the memory of pain? Can emotional energy become so intertwined with a location that it leaves a permanent stain? Whether you believe in ghosts or not, the stories themselves are real. The tragedy that fuels them is real. The buildings may fall, but the memory in one form or another remains. The stories we've explored today are deeply Japanese, rooted in the nation's specific history and beliefs. But the echoes of tragedy, ambition, and sorrow are universal. Pain leaves a mark on the landscape, no matter the language or the culture. That's the idea of horror across borders. Next, we will be talking about Krampus, the anti-Santa who drags children to the underworld. So join us every Tuesday and Thursday on this global expedition into the unknown, and make sure to subscribe. The shadows are waiting for us all over the world.